Update: my stepdaughter doesn't want me to have my baby and my husband agrees. As my story was last left, I'm 35 and find myself pregnant with a very wanted surprise baby after many years of infertility. I have a rough relationship with my mother-in-law and 2 adult stepchildren. My stepdaughter finds out I'm pregnant, flips her crap, and tells me I need to get rid of it. My husband, apparently, agrees after hearing her opinion. I left to stay at my parents' house and hadn't heard from my husband in 3 days. To be honest, I didn't want to see my husband at all. I had no desire after his confession. My radical act of self-care was ensconcing myself in my childhood bedroom, eating lots of potato chips and watching too much Animal Planet. My parents, at least, were absolutely delighted over the pregnancy. I'm an only child and my mom had always wanted more but had infertility problems, too. They went with me to my first ultrasound. They cried with me. They bought me a cake. My dad carved a little pumpkin with an amorphous blob on it that looked suspiciously like that weird, amazing amorphous blob on the sonogram screen. It was sweet. The day after the scheduled ultrasound and about 2 weeks of radio silence, I received a text from my husband saying that we need to talk and I advised him that he could come talk to me in person. We chose to meet at a neutral public location as my parents didn't really want his face darkening their doorstep, and I agreed because I didn't want him tracking figurative stuff all over my safe place. So, we talked, or rather, I talked. I informed him of how hurt I was, mostly by his agreement with SD. He said he understood. I informed him that I would not be getting rid of it for the comfort of an overgrown toddler. He nodded his head sagely. I informed him how the ultrasound went. He looked interested. I informed him that he and his children would be moving out of my house within 30 days. He was, somewhat less in agreement of this point. Dear reader, I honestly had no crap to give at this point. He had let me stew for days and days by myself. I'm not sure if his tactic was to let me suck myself into an anxiety vortex, as I'm wont to do, and come crying back, as I have before. Just, no more. I can only assume those days I spent buried beneath blankets served as a chrysalis because I was not the same person when I went out as when I went in. I wanted them out of my house, the house that I bought before our marriage, the house that was in only my name. Those bricks were designed to hold happiness, not petty comments and miserable people disguising their own black hearts with my tendency to see the best in them. It was mine, and, as selfish as I'm sure someone will tell me it was mine alone to fill as I chose, and I no longer chose them. I wish I could say that my story ends with me happily getting fat and filling up a nursery with baby things, but it's not that kind of story. Around the time my husband and his kids moved their last box out, an ultrasound confirmed that my baby didn't survive. To say I was devastated would be an understatement, but at least I had my own space to grieve, not only for my baby but for the family and marriage that had been my life for almost 15 years. I'm going to be okay. I am okay. I am also sad and discouraged and more than a little hollow, but I'm no longer held down by 300+ pounds of dead weight in my home. Thanks to everyone that reached out to me. Thanks for the advice. Thanks for making me laugh by accusing me of being a misandrist harpy and assuming I was going to run to the closest Planned Parenthood drive-thru. Thanks for being kind. Thanks for being angry. Thanks for understanding. Another update, because I've gotten a few messages recently asking for an update, I thought I'd sent one out into the universe to hopefully close the book on my story. At least, as far as Reddit is concerned. It's been about 2.5 years since I last posted and, as it goes, a lot has happened between point A and point B after I unceremoniously kicked my husband and his 2 children to the curb. They moved back in with my then mother-in-law. She was a controlling, cold person who enjoyed nothing more than puppeteering her children and grandchildren with an open hand full of money, all the while hiding a closed fist full of anger and resentment behind her back. Despite knowing this very well, all 3 moved back in with mother-in-law. She died 8 weeks later. I found it darkly ironic, since if she'd shuffled off of this mortal coil at any other point in our 15-year relationship, we might still be married today. Or maybe not. But I find it very telling that whenever I tell a curious acquaintance that she died, about the nicest thing anybody can muster is, well, bless her heart in a very southern sort of way. As far as I know, my ex-husband and his kids are still living in that same house, as it's now his. According to his Facebook, while I will shamelessly admit to checking from time to time, he's had a few relationships but nothing seems to stick. Gee, I wonder why. After all, they're such a lovely bunch. Since the children were adults and we had little in the way of commingled assets, our divorce was declared legal almost a year to the day after I filed. I'd honestly expected my ex to put up more of a fight, but it seems that his mother's death took it out of him. I guess I can't say that she never did anything good for me. After all of this, I had no desire to seek another relationship. I was happy licking my own wounds alone, trying to piece together where, exactly, it all went so sideways. The universe seemed to have other plans when I randomly ran into my ex-boyfriend at the grocery store about a month before my divorce was finalized. When I say ex, keep in mind that our relationship was one of those insanely emotional teenaged love affairs where all of the memories are carefully wrapped in a gauzy filter. We were one another's first. Everything's and broke up due to life and college. There was no big blow-up or cheating or anger, just growing up. It was a heartbreaking split, but you tend to be very different at 21 than 16, and our lives were taking us in opposite directions. At any rate, we saw one another for the first time in 15 years over a pile of slightly underripe avocados. He was still tall and perhaps even more handsome in the unfair way that some men age, but he was still very much himself. We decided to meet up for dinner while he was in town visiting his parents because he works abroad. That meetup turned into a sleepover, I'm not ashamed to say. We went through a box of Trojans at a respectable clip for 2 people on the downhill slide to 40. It was comfortable and lovely, and I thought it was a nice final chapter to the previous story we'd written. We parted ways again as friends, and then 8 weeks later I saw 2 little pink lines on a dollar store pregnancy test, only this one decided to stick around. So now I chase my growing way too fast kid around, and we FaceTime with her father at least once a day. No, we're not together, but we co-parent well. He's a wonderful man and a great dad. It may be unconventional by some standards, but it works for us, and he plans to move back once his contract is up next year. Needless to say, my ex-husband grandly accused me of cheating on him or throwing him aside for an old flame, but by the time he found out about the baby, the ink was long dry on our divorce, so his blustering amounted to no more than some angry, drunken texts and likely some hungover mornings for him. I wish him nothing more than all the happiness he brought me, so I think that's where I'll end this for now, since my daughter is due to wake up from her nap and we're going to the park this afternoon. It'll be a good day. As an aside, my cousin sent me a screenshot of my stepdaughter's Instagram a few days ago. Apparently, she's been wholeheartedly celebrating the Supreme Court's decision concerning Roe v. Wade. Imagine that. Bless her heart.